The Alabama Organ Center is the federally designated organ procurement organization for the state of Alabama. We are the middle person or the liaison between the donor family and the transplant recipient. So we counsel families, support them in their decision, and then those families that donate, then we provide those organs to the people who so desperately need them. We have several goals. First, with the donor family, is we want to be sure that they make a decision that they feel good about. Not just the day they make it, but 6 months from now, a year from now. Part of our responsibility in working with the family is to be sure that they understand what they're giving us permission to do. So we explain what's going to be recovered and that their loved one can have a visitation and viewing after donation has taken place. It's important for the family to have a complete understanding, and that even though they're in this grief situation and they're very stressed, we still have an obligation to explain to them what the process entails and where incision lines are going to be and clothing choices and things like that, because most families want donation to be in addition to visitation and viewing, and we don't want them to have any concerns that that's not going to go well for them.
The nurses like the relationship that we have with the Alabama Organ Center. They assist us in trying to work with the families in a comforting way to help them to make the decision for organ donation.
I think it's obvious how organ and tissue donation impacts the recipient and their lives. What's harder, I think, for folks to grasp is how does it impact the donor family. This oftentimes is that one positive thing. It gives them hope out of this really tragic, terrible situation that their loved one was able to do such a monumental task.
Savannah was born. She was a beautiful baby, perfect. She was just an incredible child, just loved everyone, outgoing, wasn't afraid of anything, and she was just special. Sandy and I were signing up to be organ donors on the internet.
I got online, pulled up Alabama Organ Center's website, and was in the process of signing all 4 of us, me and my husband and our oldest 2 children, to be organ donors.
Savannah came into the room and asked what was going on. We tried to explain to her, what organ donation was, best a 5-year-old could understand, and she said she wanted to do that. She wanted to be an organ donor. She wanted to help people.
And I looked at her, she's 5, and I said, "You're mama's baby." I said, "We got a long time to worry about that yet." And she said, "You don't understand. You need to sign me up. I'm not going to need it when I get to heaven."
We signed her up, and that turned out to be exactly 30 days before she was killed in a head-on collision. The doctors were telling us that there was no brain activity. The doctor just looked up and shook her head. As we were walking out, I heard myself say to her, "Is there anybody she can help?" And the doctor wasn't sure exactly what I meant. And I said she wanted to help people. Can she help somebody? Immediately the ball started rolling, and she got to be a blessing.
I missed her funeral. I didn't get to choose the music, the dress. I didn't get that last goodbye, the last hug, the last kiss. But we got the awesome privilege of knowing that day 5 people's lives were completely changed.
I'd always prayed that my daughter be blessed and be a blessing all her life. And God answered that prayer. I'm extremely proud that she was able to give of herself to make a difference in other people's lives.
It's funny that in the midst of that kind of grief and that kind of hurt, that you can feel so humbled and proud. And it's probably the proudest moment I've ever had as a mom.
It's estimated that less than 1% of all in-hospital deaths have the potential to donate organs. So that's why it's important that we get called every time. And so that referral then starts the process and gets us involved so that we can do our screening and talk to the family as appropriate. For patients who are potential organ donors, though, patients that are on a ventilator and have the chance to give the gift of life, we have to be called before those life-sustaining therapies are removed. We get called based on clinical triggers. Any patient who's ventilator dependent, if they have no cough, no gag, they're not responsive to pain, then those types of things will alert the nurse or the healthcare provider, we need to call the Alabama Organ Center. Another major trigger is if the family is considering withdrawal of life-sustaining therapies, because those patients may be able to be donors as well. The best person to call is somebody who knows something about the patient, perhaps a nurse who's been caring for them. They should have the chart available so that when we ask our questions to help with screening, then that information is there and easily attainable.
Once a patient is identified for meeting, clinical triggers, we notify the Alabama Organ Center. They in turn, would ask a few questions to ensure that the patient is capable of donating organs.
It's important to call the Alabama Organ Center before there's even any discussion of donation with the family. Sometimes it takes us some time to do our screening, and we want to be sure if we're approaching a family about donation that we really have something to offer them, that their loved one is a candidate. We don't ask everybody if they want their loved one to donate because not everybody can. It's important to remember that only Alabama Organ Center staff or trained designated requesters can approach a family about organ and tissue donation. It needs to be somebody who can answer their questions, talk about how long it's going to take, because this is a big decision for the family to make.
The call is the most important part because without the call, then nothing would happen. The AOC would not have the knowledge that there is a patient that is able to donate organs. It's probably something that the family probably wouldn't even think about, being able to give, back the gift of life. It is very rewarding to be able to see patients who otherwise may not survive.
My story begins really when I was 8 years old. I had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and it was pretty critical at that point. This is a very difficult disease to manage, and it is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is never a break from it. My new life began of shots and measuring food and no sugar and lots of finger sticks for checking your glucose levels and a lifetime of that. After I graduated from college, the complications from the disease definitely got more serious, more severe, and more frequent. Eye issues, neuropathy, infections that would just come from nowhere and spread into my bone, and then it ultimately took my kidneys and I went into total renal failure. I didn't have very long before something really terrible could happen. So I did the evaluation and got on the transplant list and waited. It was a really, really hard time to be sitting there and waiting and waiting and waiting and knowing you can't do anything except for just follow exactly what your doctors are telling you to do. It was the worst time of my life. I had been through some scary times, but knowing that my life could be cut short because I was waiting for an organ transplant. And I will never forget one day on caller ID, it popped up, the Alabama Organ Center, and I answered it, and he goes, "Miss Jones, this is Ari with the Alabama Organ Center." I immediately was like, just started bawling and cried. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is the day. I am getting a call from the Alabama Organ Center, and I'm about to receive a miracle. And not only was I going to receive a kidney, but I also received a pancreas. And that means for me personally, I have a pancreas that now produces insulin, so I am no longer suffering from type 1 diabetes. So I have been cured of an incurable disease from an organ donor.